Now listen, if you're the kind of person who thinks adding Coke to a 15-year-old single malt is acceptable, you might just be the reason this podcast exists. Welcome to the Non-Chill Filtered Podcast, where we unpack whiskey like it's emotional baggage.
And welcome back to another episode of Non-Chill Filtered, where we interview the movers, the shakers, and cocktail makers of the booze world. Today's episode features a published author and all-round turkey enthusiast, the legend, David Jennings, aka RareBird101. Sir, how are you this fine afternoon?
Doing well.
That's
trying to stay cool.
What's the temp like out there?
We're in the 90s most of the time now. Today, I think it might be a little bit. I might be in the upper 80s, but I haven't been outside much today. But the humidity is what kills us. But I guess in Australia, it's wintertime right now, right?
Yeah, that's right. Here's me typing into my phone. I'm like, what is 90 degrees Fahrenheit? Oh yeah, 32 degrees. Oh yeah, that's a relatively warm day for us in Australia.
It's more sticky. Like we have real high humidity. Like it's kind of like almost tropical at times. And so you can go outside to do like a very simple task, like I'm going to go get the mail. And you go out and get the mail and you talk to your neighbor for about 5 minutes and you come back in and your shirt's stuck to you and it's bad.
Yeah, I can't do that. I'm not built for the heat. I'm a winter kid, so I'm more than happy to, I guess, stay all rugged up because I live by the theory of there's only so many layers of clothing you can take off before it becomes illegal. So it's probably easier to stay warmer rather than colder.
Yeah, that's true.
Rather than warmer. Yeah, it's cooked.
I actually have that like kind of thing, this battle in my head sometimes, like, is it better to be cold or better to be hot? And I finally realized that, like, so in the summertime, as miserable as I am, even if like the air conditioner were to break and I would just be like hating it, I think I would hate being freezing cold more. But you can't really appreciate that until you are freezing cold because, then it's like, wow, I would gladly take being in a desert right now because like humans can kind of function in heat, but we can't really function in the freezing cold unless we've got layers of clothing and stuff like that. So you can survive in the heat easier than you can survive in the winter.
Sorry about that. My cat is now pulling apart a box for whatever reason. You can probably hear that in the background. I think he's found my latest whiskey delivery and he's just tearing it apart. Oh, it's cooked. You gotta love pets, right? But sir, let's kick off into it because I know you're strapped for time. But can you give us your comic book origin story? Like 01, we pick it up straight out of the news agency comic book store. Take us through it, sir.
Okay, so, well, I'm just for like a time reference, frame of time here. I'm 49, so I was in college in the 90s.
You look great for 49, by the way.
Well, thank you. So when I went to college, I discovered that I enjoyed whiskey and Coke or whiskey and ginger ale. It was mostly whiskey and Coke though. So it was usually Jack or Jim or Crown Royal or just whatever was kind of what was available. And I stuck with that for years. Like if my wife and I'd go out to eat, whatever, I'd always order a whiskey and Coke, Jack and Coke, whatever. And so after many years of just casually having whiskey as just like a pairing with food or, out with some friends or whatever. My brother-in-law, it was Halloween. I remember my daughter, she was not even a year old yet. And it was like freezing cold. Like we normally in the South here, we don't usually have very cold Halloweens. Usually Halloweens are pretty mild and sometimes can be hot. But this was a really cold. I think it was 2013, and he was like, "Hey, you want some whiskey?" And I was sure, like, I thought it would be in a mixed drink or something, but he just gave it to me on the rocks. It was a real like limited edition Crown Royal kind of thing, and I was like, "Ooh, like I don't know about this," I've always had it with a mixer, and I tried it and I was like, "This is actually pretty cool." I kind of felt like sophisticated, I was like, "This is next level," And anyway, I had a really good night. Enjoyed the drink. Didn't overdo it. It was just fun, and decided I'm going to get me a fancy Crown Royal. Went to the liquor store and got lost in the sea of whiskeys, and I'm like, which one of these is the best?
I'm just thinking about that. Like fancy Crown Royal doesn't really. I'm like, what is that? Black Label or something? What was?
This was the blue. It was a blue box,
Oh, I
and
think I know.
this was like, again, it was probably 15 years ago or something. Oh well, 12 years ago, whatever. And anyway, it was one of the fancy ones,
Mm.
and so I went through the Crown catalog at first, but then I started buying whiskey books, whiskey magazines. I got online, like got onto some of the message boards, just really dove in heavy, and started exploring Scotch, Irish. What makes each type of whiskey unique, and learned a whole lot from it. But eventually discovered bourbon, and that bourbon was like pretty much where my palate was kind of aiming every time I enjoyed that profile. So got deep into bourbon. Of course, you learn very quickly that a lot of the ones that are considered the best and all this kind of stuff are not easy to acquire, or they're very expensive or whatever. But that was fine. I was learning to enjoy what I could find and what I could afford. And I started writing reviews on Reddit and on the R Bourbon forum. And at some point in time, I think it was late 2014, I purchased a Wild Turkey 101 bottle. And I remembered Wild Turkey 101 from being like what you would get trashed on in college. Like, it was not a sophisticated pour. Okay. This is like shots. And it was like, in my head, I'm thinking this is rot gut whiskey. So I had every intention to just give it this horrible review, for get some laughs out of it or whatever. And I was like, wow, this is actually really good. I like this. Like, I was kind of surprised. I was like, okay, this is not what I remember Wild Turkey being. And ended up writing a review, and favorable review. And someone reached out and said, hey, have you ever had Dusty Turkey? And I'm like, what is that? And they explained the whole vintage thing. And I was like, well, I did have it back in the 90s, but I didn't know what I was having, And anyway, he sent me some samples. He sent me a 101 8-year from 81, and he sent me a 92 CGF.
Some
And
peak Dusty Turkey.
oh, yeah. And I remember I finished up work, picked up the kids from daycare, got them home, got them dinner, and then everything was kind of settled and quiet. And I had this box that came in the mail, and the samples were in there. And I'll never forget it. I remember nosing that 1981 101 8-year for the very first time. I was like, what is this? like it was like no other profile I had, from off the shelf. And I dove in hard. I was like, okay, I've got to find this. Of course, uh, there isn't really a modern whiskey that's going to taste like Dusty whiskey. I didn't know that at the time. I burned through the entire Wild Turkey catalog. I'd go to the liquor store, and just over a couple weeks, I bought everything they had, just to try. And then when I couldn't get that profile, I thought, well, maybe I'm going to have to get some of the limited editions. And I remember buying the first Master's Keep, the 17-year, and then shortly after that, Diamond Anniversary. Of course, eventually learned that you have to buy the vintage whiskey to taste like, to get the profile of vintage whiskey. But
Gotta get yourself a DeLorean, right?
yeah, right. And but more than that, I was fascinated by the story of Wild Turkey. I felt like there was this genuine quality to it that a lot of the other whiskey brands just did not have, and I still feel that way to this day. But there was something there, and the other piece of it was that at the time I got into whiskey, and I don't think a lot of folks realize this now because Wild Turkey is fairly popular now among the
It's
whiskey circles,
massive,
but
especially in Australia.
okay, yeah, well, and it's been that way in Australia for a good while. I think you guys have always had a strong appreciation for Wild Turkey, probably before a lot of Americans. But and that's something we can come back to. But anyway, it was kind of the underdog. Like, everybody's chasing Buffalo Trace products. Nothing against Buffalo Trace. I love what they do. People were chasing, Stitzel-Weller. They're trying to find these old vintages and stuff. People were after, the birthday bourbons and the Parker's Heritage. Wild Turkey was kind of, it had a loyal fan base, but it wasn't as popular in the whiskey community and the greater whiskey community as it is now. It had plenty of fans. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it wasn't loved. It just wasn't loved at the level that it is now. At least not from what I could see at the time. So I kind of like that underdog status. And then also when you would talk to people that aren't necessarily whiskey enthusiasts, but maybe they drink whiskey every once in a while, and you tell them, you enjoy Wild Turkey, they're kind of like, oof. They have that same kind of thought I did when I first got into whiskey. Like, this is the Roughnecks whiskey, And just that combination of, the history and that genuine kind of story that Wild Turkey has with the Russells, the flavor profiles, and it being kind of an underdog, it was just really attractive to me as a product, and it remains that way today. And I just, started reviewing a lot of Wild Turkey products to the point where that was pretty much all I was reviewing. It was just like, and it became the joke on Reddit, like, oh, he's doing another Wild Turkey product, And I just thought, I probably ought to put these somewhere. So I kind of have like an archive. So I created the blog to store my Reddit reviews that were Wild Turkey based. And I figured I could just have a library there. And it was private. I didn't even have it public. This was in 2016. And then at the end of 2016, I decided to just, what the heck, make it public. Maybe somebody could find it and get some info out of it or whatever. And it kind of took off. Like, I wasn't expecting that. I honestly had no idea that there would be that many people interested in Wild Turkey, especially an unofficial source, a blog. So that just fed the fire, and I kept, researching and learning new things. And eventually my wife was like, hey, you ought to write a book. And I was like, I'm not an author. Like, I can't write a book. That just sounds like crazy, And she goes, well, you write every day. You're writing blog posts. Why can't you just write a book instead? And I got thinking about it. I'm like, oh, she's right. I mean, it's not really any different. You're just spacing a big work out over a long period of time instead of a bunch of short works, And so I went, head first into it. But my only thing was like, I try to be very careful to be as accurate as possible. So the research portion took a long time, like, because not only do you have to like find a source for something, you usually have to find 2 or 3 sources to back that source up, because
you have to vet that source, right?
Correct. Because like with whiskey, I mean, there's a lot of whiskey media out there, be it, books or podcasts or videos,
much.
whatever. And it's not all accurate. So, it's, and even, and everyone makes mistakes. I make mistakes. But I mean, I've even, even distillers sometimes make mistakes. They're being interviewed. They, maybe give the wrong age or something like that. It's just because they do so much stuff that like they can't remember every single minutia of detail about every single expression. So it's
so
good to kind of verify
as well. Like with every distillery, like especially the older ones, they're just like it. And the distilleries changed hands so many times. Like they go, oh, it's my grandpappy, whatever. But the amount of times they go, oh, well, we sold it off here, bought it back, jump back in. You're like,
it's sad because I feel like there's a lot of like writing the first Wild Turkey book was a lot of fun because there was no other Wild Turkey book out there. So it was neat to be able to kind of be the first to do that. I fully expect that there will be future Wild Turkey books, whether from me or from somebody else, and I'm totally cool with that. But it's nice to have that there. I feel like that'll always be some reference for somebody. But there are so many other distilleries that have stories to tell that aren't being told. And as each year goes by, we get further and further from, what actually happened. See, someone like Jimmy, was there, in 1954. So we can get some accurate history about how things were back then because he's still around, but a lot of these other distilleries, they don't have, their patriarchs anymore. It's you're now on generation 3 or 4, so it gets every time that every generation that passes, you lose a little bit of the the story from the generation before, and there are always things that'll be passed down. But I feel like there are stories that need to be told, and then there's stories about distilleries that are long forgotten that will probably never be told because nobody really knows. In Anderson County, there where Wild Turkey's at one time was the hotbed of bourbon in Kentucky, and now, I mean, with the exception of a small non-distilling producer, all you really have there is Wild Turkey and Four Roses. But at one point in time, you had distilleries up, well over 10 to teens potentially of different distilleries operating at that time. Some very big ones too, big names like Cedar Brook and by Judge McBrayer, and then you had Saffel, and you had the Bonds, you had the Lillards, you had the Dowlings. I mean, it was just lots of Anderson County names there, all kind of weaving in and out of each other's operations and having different brands. And it's a lot of other big names had been based out of that area at one time too. JTS Brown being a recognizable one. So I feel like there's a lot of history that's being lost, and I hope that one day somebody kind of grabs a hold of it before it's too late. So
I think that's the problem as well. Like, since the information it goes over such a long period of time, the record keeping from then isn't that great. Like, we're very lucky in Australia at the moment. We have Rob Samuels out visiting.
oh, cool.
So caught up with him a few days ago, and he was telling the story of how the family got started, but he's like, the original Maker's Mark is like fourth generation. It's like every generation before that, they were making terrible whiskey. So
Right.
it's like they don't actually have the information before them because they were just like, it's not great whiskey. And now they're up to the 8th generation master distiller.
Right.
It's like, yeah, that everything before 4 is gone. It's going to be hard for distilleries to kind of grab that information and go, all right, well, this is what our product was before then.
Yeah, it's Makers has got a fascinating history, honestly.
Beautiful site. I love it.
Oh yeah, it is probably the most beautiful distillery in Kentucky. But they have I believe it was called the Burke's Distillery that was there before the Samuels purchased the property. And then the Samuels had those rick houses in Deatsville that now belong to Heaven Hill, and and then Makers, the whole story of the Makers brand with Margie and Bill, and just fascinating, and it's such an iconic design because it's very simple and it's very true to the original. I have a 70s Maker's Mark over on the shelf there, and if I put that in a liquor store, other than the tack strip, if I were to set that on the shelf of a liquor store, it would not look out of place. It looks, with the exception of very minor details, it looks exactly like Maker's
Like
Mark now.
glass imperfections or something, and a tack strip.
Just
I'm
they
sure you.
change little things on the label and stuff like that, but I mean, for the most, it looks exactly the same. But very fascinating story, and a lot of that was all branding because I mean, the Samuels aren't necessarily distillers. I mean, they're not in there running distills, but
No.
but I would say that Bill, Rob's father, Bill, uh, he really took the marketing to another level. Like he put advertisements on billboards and in magazines that you wouldn't
Spider-Man.
necessarily, yeah, exactly, that you would not think of, but he had these great ideas, and they were quirky and they were funny and they were off the cuff and kind of offensive sometimes to some people, like, but it worked. It really worked, and it's still working. They have just amazing branding, and it's simple, but it works very, very well. I'd say it's not quite as iconic as Jack Daniels. I think the Jack Daniels, logo is kind of probably the peak of like American whiskey, icons, but Makers is up there. It's got to be top 3 at least,
Well, we can take it back to Wild Turkey, but they also have such iconic branding. Like you look at the turkey, even like Austin Nichols classic turkey and you're like, yeah, I recognize what that is.
Yeah.
And do you feel like that's also important with like creating a important brand's, say, longevity?
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's where too a lot of the rebranding and stuff I feel like can hurt a brand as well. So with Wild Turkey, they had pretty much the same logo and graphic design, with the exception of minor changes for
I'm trying to find some.
okay. About 50 years, they had the
Yeah.
same label, and then they changed it, but they didn't just change it and stick with it. They changed it again, and they changed it
Yeah.
again, and they changed it again, they changed it again. And look, I get that it looks prettier, it looks fancier, it looks more expensive.
It's
The
every 4
problem is,
years though.
yeah, it's like it just the label changes are so coming so quickly, and they're just all over the place, and it's hard to keep track of. So while it makes for some often there you go, often cooler looking model because you're I guess in some ways upgrading to the latest design, you kind of hurt your iconic imagery. So brands like Jim Beam and Jack Daniels and Maker's Mark pretty much have stayed with the same looking logo and label, and it's become this iconic thing. I don't think Wild Turkey has quite cracked the iconic branding like those other brands. They're an iconic brand and an iconic whiskey, but the branding itself, the marketing, has been all over the map. I mean, they've gone from, you had marketing like advertisements in the 2000s, and you can find this on YouTube and stuff, but it's like they're embracing that biker bar image, we're Wild Turkey and tough, and like,
It's probably
and
why it
then
resonated with Aussies.
yeah, well, might have been, and have it with your Vegemite or whatever, and
Fucking oath.
but yeah, they changed it, and then they kind of they turned it into something where it was going to be more of a sophisticated whiskey, and they bring in McConaughey, and they're trying to shape it and all this, and then now I think they've realized, and I think this started around 2011 or so, because this is when I first remember starting to see this type of branding. But now I think they're putting the focus on the Russells, which I think is a very smart move.
Mm.
I think trying to make it like they had that whole "Give 'em the Bird" campaign, they had the biker bar commercials. Not Don't really think that worked well. Bringing McConaughey in seemed like a great idea at first. I don't really think it took off because it just never seemed to go anywhere after that first video, and nothing against anyone involved in that. It just did not land with whiskey people, I don't think.
Oh, what was
Um,
your thoughts on Long Branch then? Because obviously this is like one of the first times they've changed the way they make wild turkey because
um,
like they're filtering it through mesquite charcoal. Mesquite
yeah,
charcoal?
yeah, it's
Um,
mesquite charcoal from Texas. So I don't know if it's so much filtered as it is enhanced. They say enhanced. It's infused. I think that I think it's kind of, you know, from what I understand, it's more soaked into the whiskey and
okay.
less going through it. I didn't think Long Branch when it came out. I thought it was fine. I didn't think it tasted bad at all. Actually, it tasted better than I thought it was going to taste. I thought it was a great whiskey. But the only thing was with the price was really high for what it was. It was 86 proof, non-age stated, supposedly 8 years, but it was $45 or so, and
Yeah, it was like
you could
60
go.
something here.
Yeah, well, you could get, at that time it came out, you could get Kentucky Spirit for the same price and get 101 proof, and
Shit.
so yeah,
I know
yeah,
where you'd buy. Like it consumers, they're looking for value. So like, getting a bottle of Kentucky Spirit from around the same price, you're like, what are you gonna
yeah.
do?
Well, the price has gone up now, but
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
first got into it, you could find Kentucky Spirit for $45, sometimes 50. 55 was expensive for Kentucky Spirit when I first got
You would have
started.
had those fantails as well. I was
That's
just like,
right, yeah.
whoa, that's where
And
it's
then
at.
Long Branch came in, and that was 45, and then the Kentucky Spirit price was ratcheting up a little bit, but it was just you were paying for a premium product, but you weren't really getting the bones of a premium product. It was good whiskey. There was nothing wrong with it. It just lacked that wow factor. And then like you could get Russell's 10-year bourbon, at 90 proof for $35 at the time.
Yeah,
Still
it's
find it 35 at some places. And so it
insane.
made the Long Branch a hard buy, because of that. So, I was fine with giving it a go and everything. It's just not, and it's nothing. I don't dislike it. I'm just not going to spend my money on it when I can buy Russell's 10 or, a Russell single barrel or something else that I know I'm going to really enjoy instead of just something. If I want a casual whiskey, I've got tons of those in my house right now. I can grab a zillion different things and drink casually. Um, but I think once they put the focus on the Russells, I think that really landed well with whiskey enthusiasts because they felt like it was a genuine product. And so anyone that was left as a naysayer started becoming converted at that point. And, the whiskey, once I think people started trying, forgiven, that's a good one.
I was
Once people,
I was thinking about it. I was like, we're on the marketing train, and I'm like, do you want to be interesting to pour? Just a
yeah.
cheeky forgiven to really kick the morning off at 4:30 in the morning.
Oh my goodness gracious. Is that 302 or 303?
This is 302.
302, my favorite
but
of the two.
oh, love it.
Yeah.
Okay, I recently just picked up another 2 more bottles, so I think I
Okay.
got 3 kicking around here. So I have to
Well,
save some next time.
302 is notably better than 303 in my opinion. Like they're almost different whiskeys completely. So if you have them both, do the side by side. I think you'll be shocked.
Yeah, okay. I'll definitely have to give it a crack. I'm trying to look up there, see what I got.
Well, you don't
Um,
have to right now. I'm just saying at
no, no,
some
no.
point in
I'm
time.
just like, what ones? I was just looking at my top shelf because I got a couple of turkeys up there. I'm like, I wonder what that one is. But marketing's always been with Wild Turkey because look at So You're Forgiven, right? And
Right.
they're just like, well, look, we had this mistake, if you
Hmm.
call it that, and they go, all right, well, we're going to bottle it, and then you go, oh, this actually sold well. So like, look, it happened again.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, the second batch didn't sell well, so they sent it all to Australia. But hence why we have it now. But it's like, hasn't marketing always been, I guess, the forefront of wild turkey
Well,
as well?
marketing is just the spirits industry. I mean,
Yeah, I guess.
you know,
Oh, it's great.
in matter of fact, I don't think you can find a better example than vodka because
Mm.
vodka is just ethanol cut with water. I mean, it's like there's really not a lot to it. So, when you have all these different vodka brands that can all essentially do the same thing, and I'm probably going to have some vodka snobs coming after me for saying this, but folks, there's really not much difference between the different vodka brands.
But
Maybe
props
how
to
they're
Turkey.
made. What's that?
Props to Turkey for not having
That's
a
right.
vodka brand.
Well, they do bottle Sky vodka at Wild Turkey, but they just bottle
Oh,
it.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
okay.
uh,
I'm like, it's not released under the Wild Turkey brand, not like
no,
Wheatley
no,
or
correct.
yeah. There's another one as well from
There's
Kentucky that's
yeah, there's some brands that have vodka brands, and obviously Campari has Sky, but
mm,
to me, I feel like marketing is what really sells it. And so I think Grey Goose was one of the first premium like vodkas to come out as like it was in the wine bottle and all that, and really sold itself as this premium thing. Whereas years ago, I mean, after the Cold War, everybody wanted vodka from Russia and Latvia and places like that because that was the real vodka. Um, it's all marketing. It's all marketing. When it comes to bourbon, there is notable differences in flavor profiles between the distilleries. However, you still have to market. I mean, you can't just put the whiskey in a jug and write, whiskey on the front and expect to make any money. So there is a story to tell, and really, marketing is how the Wild Turkey brand began because you had Austin Nichols, and they had Austin Nichols Kentucky whiskey is what they called it, and it I guess they felt like they could sell more if they had a more relatable brand. Whiskey, bourbon specifically, being popular in the southern United States, just the same, wild turkey hunting is popular in the southern United States. So
mm.
these execs went on a turkey hunting trip, and one of the guys enjoyed the bourbon they brought. So the next time they had a trip, he said, bring some of that Wild Turkey whiskey, referring to what they had the last time. And it was just kind of like a light bulb went off and Mr. McCarthy's head, and he decided, this would be the best, strategy for selling their whiskey is to make this new brand called Wild Turkey. It would appeal to a large majority of the population that buys it, being, in the southern United States. It appeals to, you have wildlife associated with bourbon all the time. Obviously you have a zillion brands that feature some kind of animal, on them, it seems like. So there's something iconic about, bears and bulls and stags and eagles and all this
Buffaloes.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Buffaloes, yeah. So it had that going for it, and it leaves an impression. Especially an odd bird like a turkey, like a wild turkey, is just such an interesting bird. At one time, Benjamin Franklin had proposed that the wild turkey be the nation's official bird, but of course the eagle won over, bald eagle,
For
that
some
is.
reason. Yep.
Yeah, and but it was all marketing. It was just, we're gonna. It's the same whiskey they were putting in whatever they had before. They're just putting it with this new Wild Turkey label, but it did great. It won a lot of people over, and there were many celebrities in the past that enjoyed Wild Turkey. President Truman being one of the first to be a big Wild Turkey fan. He enjoyed Wild Turkey and Old Granddad and would have it every morning with his breakfast. And
Cheers
he
to
was just
that.
one of those OG guys. And a lot of people don't know this, but John Wayne was a big Wild Turkey fan. He would request that cases be delivered if he was, on location. They would send cases of Wild Turkey for him to have, and then Evil Knievel's another big one. Evil Knievel would carry Wild Turkey in his cane, and it was hollowed out where he could put whiskey in it. And you can actually go and watch an interview of him on Johnny Carson. You can find it on YouTube. But he talks about how important it was for him to take that shot of Wild Turkey before he did a stunt, because he said it was to calm his nerves. So in order to get the nerve up to make these giant leaps, he would do a shot of Wild Turkey, and it was legit. Every time he had a stunt, he would do Wild Turkey. So it I think a lot of these little things add up over time. You build like this brand, and then you have celebrities that admire it, and then that kind of sends a signal to other people that maybe I should try that. And then, you build up this little loyal fan base. Unfortunately for Wild Turkey, just like all the other brands, they suffered in the 1980s and the 1990s. Even before then, they started suffering before then, but the 80s is when it hit its absolute worst, and what everybody knows as the Glut era. So they had to weather that storm. Jimmy did a great job doing that. Of course, they were losing money. Everybody was. Um, but he handled that well because he didn't really change anything. They introduced the honey liqueur, which is now American honey. They had decanters, and he did some lower proof offerings like 86 proof and 80 proof and all these things to try to.
All the stuff they sent to Australia.
In this, yeah. So, and they did some things to try to keep the brand alive, but as far as Jimmy was concerned, he was happy just making 101 8-year, and that, and he just kept doing it. And eventually they overcame, due to, a loyal customer base and the export market in Australia and Japan and these kind of places where, it was actually making some money. Um, and look at it today. It's a juggernaut. Wild Turkey's huge. They've got a big following. Everybody knows the name Russell. If you're in whiskey and you say the word Russell, everybody instantly thinks Wild Turkey. So it's come a very long way from its earliest days. I just wish they wouldn't change the label so much.
I'm with you. Yeah, there's something special about those classic
Yes.
labels.
Yeah.
But speaking about connections to the Russells, you have your own whiskey brand. I don't know how many people know about it, like especially with the Australian audience. I know my whiskey mates know a lot about your whiskey. But did you want to take us through that? I know you're
Oh,
you're
yeah.
strapped for time here.
Yeah, well, I've got another 15 minutes or so, but
Perfect.
so yeah, so in it's been well over a year now. maybe 2. I don't know.
I think it's
Time
about
flies.
2.
It's about 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But my friend James Simons, who owns the Woodwork Collective in Louisville, Kentucky, we were talking about doing some barrel picks, and really kind of wanted to find something unique. He had some good barrels, but I wanted to find something just like that was different. And he was like, "Well, if you want to try a blend, you can try blending something. I don't mind." And I was like, "Really? Okay, I've never been given that opportunity by a distiller, whether it's non-distilling producer or distilling producer, to kind of make my own personal blend." So I was excited and came up with a combination of Mizunara finished rye and a toasted, heavily cured. It was cured for like 48 months. Rye, and a straight rye. So kind of a combination of 3 different kinds of 95 rye. And I had a profile I was really happy about. He thought it was great. But I needed something to kind of, move it along and appeal to folks. And I came up with this Raconteur Rye. And that was really just, I had another idea originally, and I looked it up and some other brand had it. So couldn't do that. But it just, walking the dog one day kind of hit me, and we started that. And it's got a little cult following, and we try not to make too much of it because we want it to kind of stay, special. But we're making more now than we did when we first started doing it. And we have another 2 batches about to be released to the United States, and then we've got one in that we're actually kind of bottling now for Australia.
Yeah.
And it's 8-year. Well, we have the 2 U.S. releases are Kentucky rye, and then we have an Indiana rye, and they're 8 years. Mizunara finished, and I think that people are going to be real happy with it. To me, the profile is on the Indiana is somewhere between the first batch and second batch, which batch 1, and then there's batch 2, which we call Brazen. Brazen is very much like a bourbony type of rye. The first one's very much a very rye, and this is kind of right in the middle. The
Beautiful.
third batch was a Kentucky one, and it was real bright and citrusy. And this one is kind of like that, but a little bit darker because it's a little older, and we gave it more time in the Mizunara, and so it's kind of like a new play on like a remix of batch 3. So we're very excited to get those out. And then last year, we kind of started on it in 2023, building the company and purchasing barrels and this type of thing. But my father and I came up with a whiskey brand that we formally launched last year called Caleb's Crossing, and it's a tribute to my 5th great grandfather, Caleb Jennings. And the first 2 releases were finished whiskeys. This was the rye that I was just holding up. It was finished in Pinot de Charente, and then the bourbon was finished in Pinot de Charente and Armagnac. And
Oh,
those
yum.
came out last year, and oh yeah, they're really tasty. I mean, you have to appreciate finished whiskey, but I was very careful to not over finish, and I think that folks that once they try it, they're surprised because I think they go into it expecting it to be one thing, and then they realize it's different. It has a lot more finesse to it than people probably think. I know there was a lot of finished whiskey released, especially during COVID, and there wasn't
So
a lot of
much.
so much, and there wasn't a lot of care put into some of those, and so you end up with whiskeys that are hot or youthful, and they're just covering it up with finishing cask, or it's been over finished, like it's just set in the finishing cask way too long, and it doesn't taste like whiskey anymore. It tastes like whatever the finishing cask was. This, I was very, very careful to make sure that it was monitored, sometimes weekly, sometimes daily, to make sure that like everything is going as it's supposed to be going. Because when it got to the end there, I was having to really hone in and make sure that, like, and it was a very hard decision. Like when you finally get to the point where you pull the trigger, because you're like, maybe one more day, maybe it's like, I don't
Yeah, you
know. I
don't
think
want
it's
to
time to
overoak
go.
it at that
Yeah.
point.
So
It's you'll cook it. But I was going to ask, what's your stance on finished bourbons and ryes? Because I know people get upset about like finishing bourbon. They're like, no, it needs to be charred American oak. But I'm like, if you can remix it, essentially.
I mean, the funny thing is, finished whiskey really only, I mean, to my knowledge, only really exists in the American vernacular. I mean, in Scotch, there's no such thing as a finished whiskey. I mean, you can use
It's all full
Armagnac
maturation.
cask, you can use a port cask, whatever you want to use. It's just Scotch,
Yeah.
I mean, of course, they'll disclose, how that maturation happened, but there's not really this, flag that exists. Like in America, there's this like red flag. Whoa, that's a finished whiskey, and it's like, maybe you should just focus on it as, is it good whiskey? Is the producer being transparent? Was quality, finishing casks, were quality finishing casks used in the process, or was it cheaper solutions like staves and spirals and this kind of thing? Nothing against the people that do those, but it all should matter to the person who's drinking. They want to kind of know how the whiskey was made. So I think that if you do it the right way, and to me, I've got a few examples I can give of finished whiskeys that I feel like are, these are the ones I look to achieving one day. Obviously, Masters Keep Revival is top of the list. I think when it comes to a finished bourbon, there is no better finished bourbon. Like, I think that is a masterpiece. I think Eddie knocked it out the park, and I can find no other finished bourbon that I feel like rises to that level.
I think I actually have
12
some behind me here. There we
There
go.
you go. Yeah, 12 to
Yeah.
15-year-old bourbon finished in Oloroso sherry cask for just the perfect amount of time, and then just so well executed. Um, Another one I'm a big fan of is the Bardstown Bourbon Company Chateau de la Baude, the very first one
Yes.
with the Indiana bourbon in it. I thought that Danny Calloway just killed it. I mean, it just, everything about that expression, just it's robust, it's flavorful, it's layered, it's complex, it's mature, it's like every checkbox you want to get. And it's like, who cares that it was finished, right? It just tastes amazing. So I think when you can get to that point where you create something that just tastes so good, it doesn't matter that it's finished. It just doesn't matter. And we took the same approach with Raconteur Rye. It was like, we didn't want to so much make the focus the Mizunara. We wanted to make the focus the rye. So that's why on the label, we made sure that instead of, you see a lot of other, and nothing against what anybody else does, but like, let's say somebody comes up with a Mizunara cask finish, they usually place the marketing heavily on the Mizunara. They want the Mizunara to be the focus because that's the thing. So
I'll
is
use
that
Larrikin for an
Oh,
example.
cognac. Okay, there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. So like they're just going, this is a rye, 10-year-old rye, but like they're going heavily on the cognac finish because that's
Right.
where it kind of pops, right?
Right, and a lot of brands do that. They focus more on the finish. So what we wanted to do is make a finished whiskey, but the focus was on the base spirit. So, you see very big here, rye. It's really big. It's like, and the Mizunara is just down here. It's a little
Yeah.
mention,
Just a
So,
light note of like, yeah,
yeah,
it's done majority of its time in rye, but we want to focus on the
right.
rye. I know you got to dip out of here real quick, but the
Got
bottling
another
for
5
Australia.
minutes or so.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's right. I'm sure this will take a little bit of time, but the bottling for Australia, you
Yeah.
touched on it.
Yeah, so I was just there last week.
Yeah,
James was bottling everything. It's a very slow process because woodwork is a hand operation. I mean,
amazing.
everything's by hand. So all the bottles are filled by hand, labeled by hand, sealed by hand. It's not one of those things we can just throw it on a line. So there's
You're not running that
we
kind
have
of operation.
it's a lot of work. So
I love it.
we had over 2,000 bottles of the large American batches. So to throw in a couple hundred on top of that is like, it's a lot of work. So it's still in that process, but hopefully we can get through all the legalities and all that kind of stuff figure out to get all this worked out in a timely manner. I know we'll get it to work out. It just takes time to get all this stuff figured out because for some reason, alcohol is such a hard thing to deal with, and it shouldn't be. We're
No.
still dealing with what I call Prohibition 2.0 here. I mean, yeah, we repealed federal prohibition, but the states, still have essentially forms of prohibition. Counties have forms of prohibition.
And you can't
So-
move bottles across state lines, which is wild.
Right. There's a lot of growing up to do in our country when it comes to alcohol that European countries and Australia and other countries don't have to deal with. So I get it.
It's just booze tax.
Yeah. You guys get killed with it too.
Oh, it's like $104 Australian per 100% by the litre. Yeah. It's diabolical. It's like $60 in tax a bottle.
We have a few states here that have horrible taxes. I believe Washington State is one of them. But for the most, we shouldn't be complaining because you guys have to put up with so much more. But
plus, we don't have bourbon like locally.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you don't have right.
Yeah, I can't duck down to like a wild turkey down the road. They pick it up at the local liquor store, and it's.
You can't make bourbon in Australia, but you can make whiskey in Australia, and you do have distilleries.
Believe it or not, you can make bourbon in Australia. So, because your bourbon classification, I was having this conversation with one of the Beam execs when I was drinking at Old Carter, but he was like, no, you can't have bourbon in Australia. I'm like, well, look, they take the Jim Beam from you guys, and they exported it, say, 80 proof. Yeah, 80 proof. Bring it to Australia, and then they drop it down to 37%. And you go, that's not bourbon. I'm like, well, your classification only matters in the US. Once you take it outside of that, it can be whatever it wants to be.
Yeah, in essence, in the liquid form, I think you're right. But marketing it as bourbon is where you're going to get in trouble because that's when there's international agreements and these kind of things.
But that doesn't actually matter outside of the US. That's where it's wild.
I guess you're right about it. Who's going to come after you? Right?
Yeah, it's Beam. Like, it's their own juice. They're just like, well, technically it's bourbon when it left the US, and for it to be classified as bourbon, and it's made in the US and like hit all those laws. But once it leaves the US, it can be whatever it wants to be.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. It's kind of tricky.
I'm like, morally, you're wrong, but like legality wise, I guess, play ball.
Well, there's the funny thing is when they get to these protective, names like champagne, these kind of things, like,
we're a para in Australia, I think. Is it a para?
Yeah, there's all these names that are protected because they're a certain style, but the reality of it is that anyone can make something similar. They just can't call it that if they want to do business, in other countries and this kind of thing. But you can still make the same thing. It's just you have to call it something else. It is kind of silly. Yeah. I get that it's protected. I get it's a product of America, but at the same time, I mean, there's so many bastardized like food things that like we have pizza, and like pizza in America is like huge, but the pizza we eat in America is not the pizza.
It's like Domino's and all these Papa John's.
These things get all mixed mashed and everything. So I get the idea to keep things protected and all that, but at
Let
the
me
end
tell
of the
you,
day,
when I was in Rome, I didn't have garlic cheesy stuffed crust, so that's clearly an American thing. It's not. It's not coming out of Rome.
I think that we pretty much bastardize all of the foods from other countries. Like, I don't think our Chinese food is real Chinese food. It's all like greasy, like fried, like it's horrible. But I mean, like for your body, but it tastes great.
Yeah, it tastes great. Play ball.
We have flour tortillas in our Mexican food. I don't think the Mexicans use flour tortillas. So, I mean, there's all kinds of funny things that where you can take a product and change it and still call that. But so bourbon is a protected name. However, that doesn't mean that someone can't distill the same properties of bourbon and put it in a new charred oak barrel. And they would still be making what's essentially bourbon. It just wasn't made in the United States, so they can't call it that. But who knows? Maybe you can age some, bourbon awesome in Australia. I don't know what the climate is like most of the time, but who knows?
The closest thing we have is I'd use Whippersnapper as an example, but they've got Australian corn whiskey, and I think it's like maybe 3 years old. I know, disgusting, but it's matured in Char 3 Virgin American oak casks, which they get from, I think, Colorado.
Oh, okay.
From memory.
So
But
it's
yeah,
like American style whiskey, I guess, is what you would
essentially,
call it.
yeah.
American
But these
style
guys have
whiskey.
called it Australian corn whiskey because Australia still hasn't worked out what we want to make our whiskey style to be. It's like we've got
Yeah.
like Scotch style, we've got essentially American style whiskey, but yeah, we're still figuring it out. But I know you have to dip. Where are we able to get your bottles from when you finally
Okay.
launch them? Do you want to plug some socials
go
in here?
to RaconteurRye.com, and you can find out information about the latest batch very soon. The website will be updated probably in the next 2 weeks or so. You can go to calebscrossingwhiskeyco.com to learn about Caleb's Crossing. To visit my blog, RareBird101. Got some reviews about to come. Beacon should be arriving this week, so I'm very
so
excited to try
excited.
Master Kit Beacon. And so
We've got
you
Bruce
should.
coming out to Australia as well
I saw
next
that.
week. Yeah, that's gonna
awesome.
be sick. I'm so pumped.
Yeah. And so I've got that review is going to be in the works, and then I'm still waiting on my Russell's 13 bottle. I've had it. I like it. It's different from the other ones, but I don't have a bottle, so I'm not going to review it without a bottle. But RareBird101.com is where you'll find my wild turkey info, and you can always follow me on social media at RareBird101 or at RBird101. And thank you for having me on. And sorry it was such a short session. We'll have to do this
fine.
again.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, you're incredible, Hank. So, yeah, thank you so much for jumping on. I will plug all your socials down in the show description as well. But, yeah, thank you. Let me...
And I'm looking forward to y'all trying that Raconteur Rye. So
I cannot wait. I've got a mate called Ben, and he is hyping it up. I think you might know Ben.
I do know Ben.
Yeah,
Ben went to Wild Turkey with me. But
yes.
we've got some special. Well, it's like a batch that's been moved to a barrel that's been just sitting for a very long time for Australia. So we're very excited to share it with you guys.
I love it. When we have that launch, I'm going to have you back on, and I'm sure we can do a tasting. I'm going to have Ben jump in as well.
I would love
It's going to be sick. All right. Well, yeah, thank you again for jumping on. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. This is non-filtered. Cheers, legends.
Cheers.